Hi, welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I'm your host, Stephanie Michelle.
Hi, Stephanie. I'm Scribe.
We might be talking about issues today that you can't relate to.
Oh, well, okay.
But if you are a person that cares about fundamental rights, I urge you to stick around for this conversation.
If I am a person that cares about fundamental rights, then I'll stick around. So if I don't stick around, then you would consider me someone who does not care about fundamental rights. Well, geez, I don't want to be thought badly of. I guess I have no virtuous alternative but to stick around.
We're going to be talking about how a cisgender person, and that would be me, so if you have never heard this term, that's someone whose gender identity corresponds with their biological sex assigned at birth, so I'm cisgender.
Biological sex is not assigned at birth. You are born either with a penis or a vagina. You are thus either male or female. Anything else is a birth defect.
Can understand and be an ally for a transgender person, a person whose gender identity does not correspond to the person's biological sex assignment at birth. So how can these two people be more supportive, particularly a cisgender person to a transgender person?
How can I be more supportive? More supportive of what? And what if I don't happen to like a particular transgender person? Not because they're trans, but what if they're just a royal jerk? Why would I want to be supportive of that person? Or am I supposed to provide support to someone purely on the basis of their swapped gender identity and set aside their character?
You're probably hearing about trans people in the media and trans issues in the news, but by no means does this mean that there are more trans people in society, in today's society, than in our history. Transgender people have been present in the United States at least since the 1600s that we know of.
They have been present in the United States since the 1600s. Yeah, I'll be generous and assume she meant in North America, rather than in a nation that didn't exist until the late 1700s.
Before Western contact, some Native American tribes had a third gender people whose society's roles varied from tribe to tribe. People dressed and lived differently from their sex assignment at birth and contributed in different various aspects of American history and culture and have been documented since the 17th century to present day.
Yeah, no. To equate some Native American tribal groups, commonly known as Two Spirits, with being transgender is, well, incorrect. Such groups operated in largely ceremonial roles, and though they did sometimes mix and match their ways of dress, to say that this was in line with what we now consider gender roles or gender identity would be a gross oversimplification. But hey, by all means, you go with your culturally appropriative self.
I believe that being an active ally for someone that is different from you is an exceptional way to experience your own humanity, which is why I'm thrilled to have my guest today here to share how we can do this.
Excellent. I cannot wait to hear how I can better experience my own humanity by looking upon other people as inherently weak who require help that only I can provide. As an ally.
So this is Kyle Sawyer to my left here. Kyle is the founder of Building Allies, an organization dedicated to turning privilege into change.
Turning privilege into change. Got it.
Kyle's a longtime trans activist and spends most of his time connecting his passions to social justice. Kyle has conducted many lectures and workshops regarding active allyship to the trans and non-binary communities to help educate individuals, organizations, and service providers in the development of their own active ally behavior.
Active allied behavior. Huh, I kinda learned how to be someone's friend in kindergarten. It seems really sad that this guest has found so many unfriendly people that need such guidance.
Kyle, so I ask everybody before we jump into our topic for the day, is there anything that's like pulling your attention that you want to share before we get into what we were planning to talk about today, that you just want to put it out there?
Yeah, well, before that, I want to address something you said earlier about biological sex assigned. Using the language sex assigned at birth is meant to replace language of biological sex.
Okay.
Right? So many trans folk, myself included, my biological sex is trans.
Your biological sex is trans. No, it is not. Your biological sex is female. You may have altered your appearance and/or your body chemistry to express yourself in a masculine manner, but you are biologically female. And besides, transgender simply means you've transitioned to the other gender, the one opposite from which you were born. You went from female to male. If trans is a gender, wouldn't that mean you're in a persistent state of flux or something? I am confused.
And so we want to just use sex assigned at birth.
Sex assigned at birth. So
Yeah.
that's a better way to say that. See, already we're
Right.
learning.
Boy, howdy, I am learning. Learning that to be an ally, I need to engross myself in someone else's ridiculous version of reality. Got it.
This is what we're here to do, because I know people that are watching, people in my own family, like they haven't had an opportunity to have a conversation like this. So hopefully we can, put some things out there that make it easy for people to understand and learn. So I've already learned something, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. That's what we do.
That's what we're here for, right?
Right. Being an active ally, becoming an active ally, it's an act of becoming, right? As we grow, as we become aware of our privileges, become aware of the marginalization that we are a part of, right? I don't intentionally harm, but I benefit, right? I benefit from the oppression of others just by existing.
Just by existing, our speaker benefits from the oppression of others. It is innate. It is unavoidable. It is part and parcel of simply being what he is. Golly, where have I heard that before?
So as we become aware of that, we can move into action, and through action is where we can start to learn how to use the privileges that we have. Like I have white passing, I have cis male passing privilege. I basically have it when I'm perceived out in the world. I use nail polish and my purple hair to help express myself a bit, but I still exist as I do.
I think
right?
White passing, cis male passing. And these privileges cause you to benefit from others' suffering. So you have transitioned into a permanent villain. Got it. Though you try to express yourself to the contrary of your maleness by using nail polish and purple hair dye. Got it.
Let's talk more about privilege, because I think that's a topic, again, someone listening haven't had this conversation.
Sure.
Yes, please. Let's talk more about how I am a horrible person for merely existing. And while you're doing that, I'll just be prepping my cat-o'-nine-tails for the ritualistic self-flagellation to try and beat the sin out of myself.
What more can we say about that to really help people understand, even though you may not identify yourself as having privilege, how some things that you have are oppressing other people, or what can we say about this?
All right, I am ready to be educated. Tell us how simply being a person, possessing or perceived to be in possession of certain outward characteristics, and taking no other action inherently oppresses others.
Well, first, privilege is not. It's not a bad word.
It's not, but having it means that I am hurting others, whether I mean to or not. So why wouldn't privilege be something that I should be ashamed of?
Not at all. It's a way to identify the benefits. So, for example, when before I started being read as cis male, I was perceived. I'm a mixed race person.
You are? I literally had no clue of that until you just said so.
And as perceived as a... Let me start over.
Okay. Quiz time. Is this a real instance of being emotionally overwhelmed? Or is our speaker just buying time and sympathy to collect his thoughts about a subject that makes absolutely no sense?
This is important. This is important. I know why you're pausing, because it's a really important thing to make clear or help people understand. Yeah.
Yes, and it's also it's layered, right?
Right.
So right now we often talk about white privilege. So let's talk about that, right?
Right.
So with that's both a personal experience as well as a systemic, right, issue.
White privilege is a personal and systemic issue. Got it.
And you can look at it in terms of housing loans, right?
Right.
There's history, it has been shown that those that are perceived as white or are white are getting much better rates in this area, right?
Right.
And that's not a person's life, right?
Right. Home loans? We've gone from active allyship for trans people to white privilege to home loans. And this is all the clarified point after emotionally pausing, after talking about being mixed race? You know, I am just not sure if I can handle this much profound thinking.
So on the other extreme, what we're looking at is we have these male white mass shooters, and they are going in and they are killing children. They're killing everybody.
Okay, so from active allyship to trans people, to white privilege, to home loans, and now to male white mass shooters killing everybody. Got it.
And the response to that is compassion, it's care, it's let's put a bulletproof vest on you and take you to Burger King, right?
Right. Ah, yes. The infamous Dylan Roof being taken under guard to Burger King by police to celebrate his killing 9 people in a church because he was a white male and the victims were all black. Golly, that was a completely horrible scenario. Did that actually happen? No. No, it did not. An officer went out and picked up a burger and brought it back to the still chained up suspect to eat while they waited for the feds to arrive, since Dylan Roof had apparently not eaten in days to that point. Being humane to the inhumane. Being civilized. But hey, increasing paranoia over racial tensions and trying to prove that white privilege exists even for mass killers, it does make a wonderful false narrative to help support a racist, sexist ideology, doesn't it?
And then you have a child who's walking home be shot to death because he's perceived as a threat. And he's an African American child. Like, he's a young child, 12 years old.
A 12-year-old shot by police. Okay, I can only assume, because it's never clarified, that our speaker is talking about Tamir Rice, who was perceived as a threat because he pulled out what any reasonable person would have seen as a gun on reporting witnesses and then on the arriving police. The gun turned out to be a toy, but there was no way for cops to have known that going in. And it is a legitimate tragedy that it happened. But this, the killing of a child over a mistake, that is an example of privilege. Got it.
This is privilege. It's this something as small as you get better loans, you get treated better, a cab's gonna stop for you and give you a ride, to not having to worry about getting shot, being able to call the police and feel safe, right?
Wow. All of those things are guaranteed because of white privilege. Golly, you're right. Privilege isn't a bad word. But it's oppressing people. Oh, my head.
There are so many layers to it, and it's a process of becoming aware and realizing, like, it's there whether we want it to be there or not, right? Yeah, you can be a good person and have privilege. You can be a good person and still benefit because of it's a system in which we live.
So how do we use privilege to help somebody? So if first step is kind of acknowledging that it's there,
awareness.
And it's not bad or good, and I like you saying that, it's not a bad word.
It's not bad or good, but it's inherently oppressing other people. Got it.
How do we use it to help others that don't have it?
Right. Well, so if you're in a position of hiring, who are you hiring, right?
Well, I am hiring the most experienced and qualified people. Full stop. But do tell me, who should I be hiring? But our speaker never goes on to tell us, at least in the portion of the video that I ended up watching. I can only assume, given the rather extensive description of what white privilege was before this point, he wants us to hire people who are not white and/or male. Which, is totally legal.
If you're standing in line at the grocery store and you don't get checked for your ID for using a check, but the African American woman behind you does, say something, stand up, call it out, right?
Wow. Being a white male means I do not have to show identification when paying with a check. All those times people pay with checks these days. But if by some non-Euclidean stretch of the imagination that were to actually happen, be sure to speak up for the black woman standing behind you, because, obviously, she can't speak up for herself. Got it.
Are you a person who goes to rallies? Did you go to the Women's March and wear your pink hat? Great. Did you also go to the Black Lives Matters rallies? Because, I'm guessing not, right?
Went to the Women's March, but didn't go to the Black Lives Matter March. You're guessing. Why would you be guessing? What would lead you to that conclusion that someone who attended the Women's March would automatically not attend the Black Lives Matter march? And why is it incumbent upon someone to attend both? I wonder what our speaker thinks of someone who did not go to either.
I can have certain conversations because of the way in which I'm perceived. And so I have those conversations with other folks who are perceived as white or who have a similar levels of privilege as I do. We have these conversations with each other, right?
Right? What conversations? What conversations can only you have based on what you look like? What power is inherent to someone based on their appearance?
It's like folks early on in my transition would, I would be the token trans person, right?
Right.
Talk to these schools, come talk to our group. A friend of mine is dealing with this right now, right?
Right.
Do this, but we're not going to pay you for your labor. We're going to use you. We're not going to take, we're not going to do any of these other things to honor that you're doing this work, right?
Right. Okay, so you are the only transgender person that your friends know. They want to give you a platform on which to speak about your experiences and educate others. They ask you if you will volunteer to do so, but because they're not paying you, it is somehow an injustice for your being transgender. Got it.
And also what comes up for me now that you said that, now that you clarified that, so if you're a person like me, white lady, that's cisgendered, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I really do love how this showcases the eggshell walking way in which we are supposed to speak to certain people. I love how the interviewer is so very self-conscious of her skin color and her gender identity. How she has internalized these inherent flaws and defers her word choice to our speaker, the authority on how to, and not to, address people like him. A person who has gone to great lengths to pass as male, but who doesn't want anyone to think he's too male because that attribute has privilege, which is neither good or bad, but automatically oppresses people, so he uses nail polish and hair dye to belie his perceived maleness, which isn't at all contradictory to what being transgender is. Yes, this is certainly the kind of world we are all striving for. And that's it. My brain cannot handle any more of this scattershot nonsense. The interview goes on for at least another 45 minutes. If for whatever reason you would like to hear more, a link to the full talk is in the description. And if you do watch it, and if you discover any wisdom that I have thus deprived myself of, please leave it in the comments below. And, as always, thank you for watching.